everybody, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are doing yet another recent reads. But I'm very excited about this one because after this video I will finally be caught up in everything that I've read in DNF'd, which is like it's been a while since that's happened, so very excited about that. But we are actually going to start this video with two books that I DNF'd because I realized they just weren't for me. And so the first one is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, which is an adult fantasy horror kind of thing. It's taking place in like the Little Mermaid story, but it's after like the marriage has already happened, kids are born, and like the kids are not very old, and that's kind of where this take starts in. Very dark. And then we also have Strange Beasts of China by Yan Gay, and this is an adult like magical realism fantasy kind of thing where we're following a character who's basically a cryptozoologist who's studying these beasts that are around them and like describing them. Both of these books I only made it 10 pages in before I DNF'd. For The Salt Grows Heavy, like I pretty much knew from the first sentence that the writing style probably wasn't going to work for me, and it didn't. It's also a very dark story that I wasn't totally vibing with, so I just went ahead and DNF'd it at page 10. And then for The Strange Beasts of China, again, I really wasn't vibing with the writing style, and this was also like the way that the story was being told was a little bit looping in a way that I don't totally love. And with this, the chapters are kind of about each, like one individual kind of beast. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if I got halfway through this chapter, and then I decided to go ahead and like skim the end of the chapter to figure out what this mystery thing was. And I read it and I was like, oh, I don't care. That does not interest me in any way. So I went ahead and DNF'd this one at 10 pages in as well. And then I picked up The Bruising of Qilwa by Naseem Jamnia, and this is an adult fantasy where we're following our main character of Firuz. And Firuz is a refugee who is now living in their new city and applies for and becomes an assistant to like a healer of sorts. But strange things starts happening in their city pretty quickly, and this strange plague is turning up, and Firuz really wants to help people but also figure out what this strange disease is, as well as like take care of their family, and the story kind of goes from there. I also DNF'd this book, but I made it much further in this one. This is only 176 pages, and I made it to page 106, so that's just shy of 60% of the way in. And ultimately, what I will say about this book is that there was too much going on for the length of a novel we have, because we have this mystery with the plague and what's going on with this plague, but we also have a lot of interesting commentary and a little bit of a subplot about gender identity and expression, and really truly exploring that as well. And we have this other kind of subplot going on about this refugee crisis in this city and what is happening with the politics, what's happening with the refugees, and how Firuz is kind of caught in the middle because they are a refugee themselves, but it is also like, you know, they are also more able to find work than most of the refugees, and they're trying to help their people as well. And so there's these three different kind of big things that this book is trying to explore, and it's really just too much for this one short novel. And so I feel like either the author should have expanded this out into a full novel to really truly give all of those things the time that they deserve, or it should have been pared down into one, maybe two things, and really focus in for the book. Because ultimately what ended up happening is it just was slow, and it felt very much like we were just wandering through this story in a way that I didn't totally love. By the time I got to page 106, I was just like, oh, I know what's happening. Like, I know the answer to this mystery, and like, I know what and why and all of this kind of stuff. And just for fun, I did like skip to the back to see if I was correct, and I was. And I was just like, okay, I'm no longer interested in reading this because I have the answer to the mystery, and that was really the only thing that was intriguing me, because again, we weren't able to give enough time to these other parts, and it was just kind of wandering around. So I think that this was interesting. I think that this author shows a lot of promise, but ultimately this book just wasn't quite it for me. So again, I just DNF'd it at page 106. And then I picked up Made for Each Other. It's called Made for Each Other by Paul D. Storrie and illustrated by Eldon Cowger. And this is the second book in My Boyfriend is a Monster series. It's a young adult romantic graphic novel series. I read the first one this month and I thought it was so much fun. And so I went ahead and picked up the second one. This is following our main characters of Tom and Maria, and Tom is a Frankenstein monster. Frankenstein's monster. And so when he meets Maria at school, he's just like, oh, I wish I could. But, and then Maria convinces him that yes, he can. And the story kind of goes from there. And I really liked the first book in this series. I did not like this one nearly as much, though. There was just something about it. We just didn't have a ton of chemistry between these two main characters. They didn't really get to know each other at all before they were like, we're dating. And so, like, I didn't feel anything for them. And honestly, I think their characterization kind of fell flat in general. And while the story had potential to be interesting, like the main, like, there's a mystery thread running through this book that had the potential to be really interesting, but ultimately the execution didn't quite hit its full potential for me. So ultimately, like, none of the things in this book really were good. I don't think any of it was bad, but it just wasn't great. And so I was very disappointed by this. Like, I think that the illustrations were actually pretty interesting. These books are black and white, which does make it a little bit more difficult for me to see what's going on, but I think it was okay. And the drawings themselves are pretty good. So yeah, not, like I said, not as good as the first book. Very much a disappointment, but I will continue on with the series, especially because it seems like each book is by a different author, so maybe I'll just have better luck with the next book. But I gave Made for Each Other 2.75 stars. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about in this book is Nothing But the Rain by Naomi Salman. And this is an adult fantasy, magical realism, I'm not totally sure, kind of book. It's a novella. But in this tiny town, the water, the rain, has the ability to wash away your memories. So like one drop of rain can wash away like the last 90 seconds of your life. And so if you stand out in the rain, you can very quickly and easily lose days of your memory. And so we are following our main character of Laverne, who is an older lady, in her 60s, as she is living in this tiny town. And this was interesting. This is another one where I'm like, the premise of this is so interesting, and I would adore seeing a story in this. And so I read this, and I liked the premise, and I liked this idea of it's written as a series of diary entries. So it's really cool because we get to see like how Laverne has lost her memories when she can't necessarily easily see that same thing. So I really appreciate how, like, again, the premise of this, I really appreciate the, like, how this story is being told, But what I did not appreciate was Laverne herself. And unfortunately, in this case, Laverne really, like, my dislike of, like, I didn't hate her. I didn't think she was a horrible person, but like I just got irritated with her, and it genuinely just kind of interfered with my ability to like this story. Now, what I will say after having read the entire story is that ultimately this isn't for me anyway. I got to the end. I understand the point of this story now, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's not really for me. I'm glad that I read it. But yeah, not a story that's ultimately for me. So like, do with that what you will. I like I said, I think that if you're more into magical realism type stories, this might work better for you. But I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was fine, and I liked some things, but also disliked some things. And it took me until the end to realize that it wasn't for me. So like, I don't know. Anyway, 3 stars. But that's it. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please leave me a comment down below. And that's it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.